Well, quite a fascinating story, Dr Motsuenyane, on how the bank was founded, the hurdles you had to overcome, and finally open the bank. And I'm now pleased that I know how the first branch had to be opened in Garankuwa, if I have to say so. But then the experience continues from that time to 1990, early 90s, thereabouts, right? Yeah. But throughout the period from the opening of the bank up to when the bank was sold, what was the experience like?
From 1975 up to 1995, the bank operated very well throughout the country. By 1995, we had established 32 branches nationally, and we were happy with the branches that we had established. Our people were beginning to bank, put their money in the African bank. We were not merely lending money out to the people, we were also receiving deposits from our people. That is what we wanted in the African bank, savings and loan at the same time, to encourage our people to become savings conscious. And that what, of course, impeded our growth was the difference that at the beginning when we started the bank, we encouraged people to buy shares, very small shares, 100 rand, most of the people. And then we came to a point where we were unable to maintain the ratio between savings and the income into the bank. Our equity remained low when the savings were going up. The Reserve Bank requires that the ratio of 1 to 16 be maintained, and we were unable to keep that ratio. And in 1995, we were expected to pump in 100 million rands to close the gap between our income and the equity. And we were unable to do that. At that time, we approached our government.
The new government now, at that time?
In 1995, when we came under curatorship, we approached the government privately to say, time has come when the bank should benefit something from the government. The government ought to do something to rescue us from curatorship. And that was difficult. During the time of government of national unity, we were told that no, you cannot seek relief from the government at this moment. But this had been done before for the rescue of other banks, the Volkshuisbank and other banks, where we know where the government of the Afrikaners did rescue some banks. But we were not rescued. And at that time, NAIL, which was a company created by Dr. Motsuenyane, myself and others, brought in 50 million. And we got the other 50 million from a white company, NBS, Natal Building Society. And we rescued the bank at that time through the intervention of NAIL and NBS. Then from that time on, the bank got under increasing white control when whites began to invest more money into the African bank, until such time that even NAIL became, a subsidiary. And the control of the African bank until 2014 was in the hands of those that pumped in more money in equity,
and that's how
into the African bank.
The NAFCOC and the black shareholder control or influence diminished.
Diminished, yes.
Yeah,
because our involvement equity-wise was lower than the investments that we got from white community through the stock exchange. It is through the stock exchange, when the bank got registered at the stock exchange, that more shares were bought from the African bank by other companies, including other banks. They also bought shares from the African bank. So the African bank became bigger and bigger, but the contribution came largely from other than NAFCOC members.
That part of the story of the bank is interesting, instructive actually. There are lessons to be learned from that. There's talk of a black-owned bank being established in South Africa, and there are more and more calls for that, as if a bank of that nature had never been established. And it was established in the apartheid days. For you personally, what was the major lesson and even setback with African Bank? Because definitely it must have been a flagship project.
We felt that our government had failed us when we, in the first instance, approached them for help, which they could not have. The PIC, for instance, might have come in at that stage, but now, quite belatedly now, in the second fall of the bank in 2014, the Reserve Bank, other banks, and the PIC came to the party to save the bank from collapse. And I now know that the African bank was cut into two, a bad bank and a good bank. The good bank for 3 years has now been making good profit. And I think now is the time when black people should come back and buy more shares in the African bank to regain the control of an institution which took us time and great effort to create. I think that we should recognize the African Bank as the first black bank in our country. And in order for it to be that, we need to pump money into the bank from the Africans, and the shares that were contributed by the Reserve Bank, for instance, to salvage the bank, 5 billion. This is money that should really come largely from our African people. And I think we can manage to pay 5 billion to get the Reserve Bank, to pay the Reserve Bank's shares back. And this is now the time for us to come to the party.
You get a sense that that is happening, and that there are talks to...
We are quietly organizing ourselves to regain control of the African. It can happen. In fact, if the PIC retains its presence in the new African Bank, as well as the other banks do not hurry to pull out their money, we should fight. Our first battle must be to retrieve the money that belongs to the Reserve Bank, the 5 billion, pay them out. This can be done.
Well, Dr. Motsuenyane, thank you very much for allowing us the time to talk to you, ask you these questions, and enjoy time with you.
Thank you very much.
And we appreciate the fact that you've also been a real-life inspiration and a real-life role model for so many of us. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that's all we had for you on the Modise Network for this week, and we hope to catch up with you again next time. And from us, goodbye to you.